Oh, I know that song. Hey, everybody, you're watching Yesshift. I'm Dan Schinder, and
Steven Schinder.
we're a father and son podcast vlog team. He's the father. I'm the son. Wait, I always get that mixed
No,
up.
it's the other way around.
Okay, that's right. And this is our new adopted son, Trevor Rabin. Trevor, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Really
Really
well.
great.
We're both huge fans of your music, not just with Yes, but your own music, cinematic music. Just such an amazing few decades it's been, which is weird for me because I don't know if I could say this about any other musician, but I remember where I was exactly when I heard about you. This new guy, and yes, he's still in his 20s. And then was not long after that I heard Owner of a Lonely Heart. And my first question was, and this was on some small speakers in a workshop where I was working. My first question was, well, what were those trash cans in the beginning? That was weird. But here we are from 29 to 69. Now you're putting out a solo album for the first time in a very long time. And we're eager to talk about that.
Absolutely. It's time flies, man.
Yeah, yeah. And the first thing I want to comment on is your voice does not sound on the album, well, even right here, like it's aged all that time. How do you feel? You look great.
Well, I think I've been lucky with the voice. I mean, one of the perfect storm situations was before I started the album. I mean, once I started doing film in 94 or 5, I think, I didn't sing for the longest time. I did a couple of tracks. I remember there was a movie, Banger Sisters, where I sang an old Animals song, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. But
Yeah.
outside little bits and pieces and backing vocals and just singing as an instrument on the scores at times, I wasn't using my voice a lot. But then uh, just before starting the album, or a little while before starting the album, I went on tour and did over 200 shows with John and Rick. So it
Yeah.
was opportunity to get the muscle in place. So it's been in good shape since then.
That's great. And even that seems like it's been a while now, right?
Yes, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Great. So Rio, your first vocal solo album. I'm cheating. I'm looking at notes because just so much we wanted to talk about. We thinned it out. Since 1989's Can't Look Back. Great album, great videos with that. And then 2012's Jacaranda being instrumental. Can you tell us about the process of, you know, this getting made? How long did it take? And was that music bouncing around in your head all that time? Or did you consciously sit down and say, I'm gonna do an album, let me get creative?
You know, it's a great question. During the time that I was doing loads of films, the house was I was like an alcoholic in so much as every drawer, if you opened it, there wouldn't be a bottle, but there'd be a scrap of paper with manuscript on. So I had tons of ideas. Some of them were relating to themes on films, but there were a lot of song ideas which I just never got the chance to explore in any real way because I was so busy with the films. But when I decided, okay, I've got to do an album, because I looked back and I thought, I haven't done a vocal album for, as you say, triple decades, and I can't afford for that to happen another time. I won't be here. So I thought, okay, I got to get going. I got to get going. And the great news is once I started, I actually stopped doing everything else and I concentrated 1,000% on the album, and never worried about where it was going to be released, who was going to release it. I had this guy I really trusted, Thomas, who's the record company. And when I finished the album, literally, absolutely finished it, I didn't do what, as you would know, an artist and lawyer and the manager to do, send it to 5, 6 people or 500 and just, play one against the other and try and get the deal up. And that, I thought, I'm not even bothering with that. I sent it to Thomas and I said, look, I've done this album. I'm really happy with it, excited about it, and but I don't want to say any more than that. I'm going to send it to you, and if you like it, let me know. And I signed to him. It never looked at anybody else.
Wow.
So it was a very kind of free experience. It was, I wasn't relying on any outside input, which is always useful, but I didn't this time. And start to finish, I just got in, did it, and ended.
And it felt like a no restrictions creative process because of that, in part?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And one of the benefits or negatives to it, and I think it's a benefit, is I ventured into different areas, different genres almost. And I just thought, okay, well, that's what I want to do. I want to be excited. So, and I went into all these different areas, and then I put the producer cap on. I said, okay, how is this going to cohesively and coherently work together? And the voice is the voice is the voice, so that doesn't change. And I think that was the glue. That, and guitar wise, I have whatever the style is. Those, I think, were the two main things that kind of glued it all together.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned different genres. I want to just give everybody a heads up that there's even just the 3 songs we've heard, The Big Mistake, Push, those are both out yet, already the first 2 singles. And then one that's yet to come, Oklahoma, that's not out yet, is a completely different soundscape, if you will. So we're very excited for the rest of the album. Yeah.
I think every song is very different. I mean, there's actually some pick and chicken country stuff on it as well, which I just love doing. So
that's great.
I think it all works together. It does sound like it's on the same album, ironically.
Yeah, definitely. Steve?
Was there any material for this album that was originally worked on for a different project and then later reworked for this album?
Actually, no, which is, I think the good news is because I had been considering doing an album for so long. As I say, those pieces of paper that were everywhere were never really meant for anything else. I mean, some of it, in fairness, were ideas for melodies for film. And in fact, I remember on Armageddon, the film Armageddon, I'd written out the melody, and I thought, oh, that could be a strong theme for the movie. Because I remember Jerry Bruckheimer saying to me, listen, no pressure, but the theme has to be the world anthem. And I wrote something, and thankfully he liked it. So, as did Michael Bay, and those were the 2 hurdles.
Did you have a contingency plan in your head?
Sorry?
Did you have any kind of contingency plan in your head if they said this about it or wanted more of this, or was it just, this is what they're getting and it's got to work out?
Every day, every week, every movie, every minute, the stomach lining is gone.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Now, it's pretty hectic because, if you do something that you're really happy. I remember doing Remember the Titans, and the first thing I wrote for it was, I was so happy with it. It was kind of almost Bartok-y in approach, and almost atonal at times. And I remember looking back at Jerry very proudly, Bruckheimer, and he just said, try something else. And my heart sank. But then I came up with something else, which is probably my proudest moment in films. So yeah, it's kind of hectic, but I can't think of one moment in film that I wouldn't go through again. Although some of the stress was heavy, but all the music I'm pretty proud of, and the people I've worked with. But but back to the songs. I mean, there were pieces of paper everywhere, and I remember I went for dinner with my wife, and near the beginning of the film, and at the beginning of Rio, the album.
Yeah.
And she was talking to me, and I'm listening, and then she just kind of stopped and said, "You're not listening to a word, are you?" And I said, "Oh, what?" And she said, "You want a piece of paper?" So, there are times where I just drift off.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want a piece of paper? I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a while ago we read online about a song called Scarlet from the Tide that was considered for the Yes Talk album.
Yes.
Did that become part of any song there, or is it a separate song? What became of it?
Yeah, that was a song, if I remember correctly, Mark Mancina, who played keyboards in my band when we went on the road, the solo band, that was, I think, penned by us. I can't quite remember, but it's a good point. It's a great song, Scarlet of the Times. Yeah. Wow, did you ever hear that? Because
No, I've never heard it. I just remember reading the title in an interview from like the 90s. I came across some
oh my
years ago, and
goodness,
it was
yeah,
called Scarlet from the Tide back then. So
yeah,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah, it was
Is
a
there
really
a
good.
demo of it, like on an Akai 8-track or a 2-inch somewhere in a closet, maybe?
You know what? It was probably, there was a thing that Akai made years ago, which was almost like a video cassette.
Yeah.
Yeah, with 8 tracks. Is that the
Yeah.
one you're talking about?
Yeah, it is. And the
Goodness.
first time I saw it was I was at that guy's house. That's Alan White when he lived in the West Valley.
Oh my
He
goodness.
lived in the neighborhood where I grew up, and I ended up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was 1990. So I was at his house, and he played me some stuff that you guys were working on. He said, "Yeah, we all have one of these," and he showed me the Akai deck and how it
Yeah,
worked. So that's what made me think of that.
it was such an amazing piece of gear, especially for the time,
Yeah.
just all encompassed on this one thing. Then you record, mix it. I used to mix it onto an Atari quarter-inch machine, but it sounded pretty good. In fact, a lot of Big Generator was written that way.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that album is 36 years old this month, if you can believe it.
Oh my
Crazy.
goodness. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's very sad, so many people have, Alan and Chris,
Yeah.
and recently a very close friend of mine, a South African guitarist, Julian Laxton, just passed away.
No, we don't think of that when, we're all so much younger. But I think, at least from my standpoint as a music fan and following Yes since 1971, and as a band or an artist, they keep going and going, and oh my gosh, they're in their 40s. Are you kidding me? And now, now everyone like in their 60s, 70s, and you don't think that there's going to be an end to it, but
No, absolutely. And you say it so well. I mean, I remember when I first joined Yes, I was like, wow, these guys are nearly 40.
Yeah,
I remember that very clearly.
Yeah. Alan was he had just turned 42 in that picture. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm holding Steve's older brother, who's 4.5 years older, like 2 weeks after he was born. And I had hair. Who knew?
Amazing.
Do
Yeah.
you think you'll do another Jacaranda type album, another instrumental, Trevor?
My son said to me while I was in the middle of this album, he said, "Are you going to do a Jacaranda too?" And I said, "Can I just finish this first?"
So too soon to ask. We'll ask on the next interview.
No, but I definitely intend to. I love making that record.
That's
Once
great.
again,
Yeah,
it was,
it's brilliant. Yeah.
once again, it was just total freedom. I like this album, Rio. There were no kind of confines or restrictions I put on myself or accepted from myself.
I gotta think there's there's probably a whole other fence that's not there when you're not going to weave in lyrics or words and singing and the singing melody and the hook is like that's got to be a whole. I don't want to say weight off your back, but it must change the process immensely. An album of instrumentals.
Oh, very much, very much, and you're completely concentrating on, where the solo is going to start, which mode you're going to be bringing it in and
right.
And all those things, which are so much fun. It's but I tried to integrate that on Rio. I didn't want to just do a vocal album. I wanted to do an instrumental album with vocals, if you like.
Nice. Yeah.
And kind of merged the two ideas together.
Interesting. Can't wait to hear the rest of it. When does it come out again?
I think it comes, no, it does come out on the 6th of October, the whole album.
Great. We're going to show some images because there's a vinyl version, red, clear vinyl, a gatefold album. This is just beautiful. Includes Blu-ray featuring 5.1 surround sound mix and a 24 high-res stereo, 3 bonus tracks. Maybe one will be the song that Steve brought up. Extensive liner notes and an Obi strip. There's some really neat stuff here. That's a great package.
Yeah, in fact, I think I'm receiving the vinyl this week, so I'm really looking forward to that.
What do you think of the whole vinyl return of vinyl? Sounds like a horror movie from the 50s. What do you think of the whole return of vinyl?
It does, but I love it. In fact, I got a test pressing and I put it on. I thought, it's like just having that first puff of a good cigarette, and I don't smoke, but it was just great. And you turn it up and then it goes whoop, because it's too loud and you've got to close the top.
Right.
Something almost spiritual about vinyl. It's such a great medium.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do you think you'd tour this new album?
Well, it's early days, but there's never an album I've done. Although I didn't tour on Jacaranda, but there's always the hope that we're going to tour. I mean, it's funny. The last solo tour I did was on Can't Look Away. So,
yeah, Can't Look Away.
It's funny. I had a chat with Lou, talking about it, and I even had a chat with Vinny, the Caliuta.
Oh, Caliuta.
Yeah. Magnificent drummer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's certainly in the cards. I hope we do that. And
gosh, between Jacaranda, your first album, this album, you have certainly a full show. And if no one's in for it, do a true solo tour. Play to your own tracks. One song you play guitar, another song you play keyboards, the next song you play drums, the next song you play accordion, then the didgeridoo, and you just do the whole thing yourself.
Exactly. Maybe I should do just a looping thing, just bring just me and a drummer.
You got some great musicians on there, like you mentioned. You got Lou from the tour you did with John and Rick. You've got Vinny Caliuta. You got your son Ryan on there. What was that like working with your son?
Oh, it's always great. Although he's judgmental,
I know what you mean.
I don't. Yeah, I was going to say with Steve. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I was 12, I remember Ryan was in bed and I just went to Sydney's bedroom and the lights were out and I was just talking, and I remember him saying to me, "Wow, Dad, you're really smart." And I was so chuffed with that. I thought, what a great thing to hear from your son, And then it seemed like 2 minutes later, he was 15 and I turned into an idiot.
I was going to say, and then he grew up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Turned into an idiot.
Right.
How old is he now? I'm sorry, Steve. How old is Ryan now, if you don't mind me asking?
He's about to be 38.
Okay.
Yeah.
No longer an idiot. He grew out of that.
We're also approaching the 40th anniversary of 90125 in November. Do you have a memory from that period that you perhaps haven't shared elsewhere that you'd like to share?
I cannot believe, I really just cannot believe it's been that long. But actually something which is kind of unrelated to music, but I remember, I was living in LA, so I was going to London and then going back to LA, and I grew up driving on the left-hand side of the road, so I was used to it. But I'd been driving in LA, so I got to London and it was 3 a.m, and I'd left the studio and I was on my way home. There's this long, pretty thin road. England, there's no huge Cadillacs to worry about. There's little Fiestas and stuff. Anyway, I'm driving home and I look up and I'm tired. It's 3 a.m. and I see this car coming towards me, and I blew my horn. I said, "Get to your side of the road. Get to your side." I was on the right-hand side of the road. And eventually I realized at the last minute, and this guy must have thought I was playing chicken or something.
That's so funny.
So I remember that pretty vividly.
It's funny. I lived in Australia for a little while, and when I started
Also on the
driving,
left.
yeah, I kept getting in on the wrong side. I'd jump in and realize, hey, where's the wheel? Oh, it's over there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Your brain just gets so programmed, the muscle memory sometimes is you have to undo it, unlearn it, or unwire, rewire it.
Especially at 3 a.m., been in the studio since 11.
Funny. And I know we're short on time, if not over. Do you have just a few more minutes, Trevor?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Steve?
Right. So one of the other questions we had is early in your career, you were in a South African rock band called Rabbit. Do you think there's any possibility of a Rabbit anthology set in the near future?
Yeah, with all the re-releases, remasters, vinyl coming back, can we get something?
It's something recently we've been talking about. What happened years ago is the company the record company basically ceased or went, I don't know if it was bankruptcy or reorganizing, whatever it was, but they were gone. And the drummer of Rabbit and myself, we bought the rights to the album. So I can't blame anyone else if it doesn't happen.
Okay, we would love that. And I have kind of a retrospective production question for you, Trevor. And I'll lead up to the experience you just had with this album. But the question begins going back to Recording Talk. If I remember correctly, that was the very first album ever completely recorded to hard disk. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. There was certainly no precedence for me to look at or examples.
Right.
And so, I remember very clearly. There were things where we had to. I mean, so it's almost incomprehensible today. But there was, I think, 4 RAM was the memory, onboard memory, and that was big time, right?
Yeah.
And the hard drives were. I remember this thing to Dynatech, who managed to make something that had like 400 or 600 megs, and there were just a ton of them, but it was only 4 tracks per Macintosh. So I needed more than 4 tracks. So I had 4 Macintoshes, and we used a jam box or some piece of gear, which would jam up all the time. And so that was 16 tracks, and that you'd be able to bounce between them, but all you had was 4 Macs with 4 tracks on each, but you still had the ability to to in a non-linear way manipulate things. So
if you look at that, and of course it was so futuristic at the time for you to do that, which is now, as you described, so archaic.
Yes.
How has technology changed from then to now, and how has that affected the creative process, not having to be an astrophysicist to record a freaking album? And I'm sure there's a learning curve for any new software, of course, but how did that make this experience different with the modern day version of digital recording?
I think it's a matter of discipline. You have to discipline yourself not to let things become so easy and lean on them. For example, when I was doing vocals, if there was what the whole thing, you can tune a vocal these days, just sing one note and do it, right? But I made sure that everything I did was if it was out of tune or it wasn't a good take, I'd redo the take. And right from the beginning with Talk, we always made sure that we stuck to that discipline.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And we got one more question for you.
Yeah. So there's this legendary story in Yes Fandom about a 20-minute version of the song Cinema. Does that exist at all on a tape somewhere, or what's the story behind that?
I remember there was a guy, unfortunately, he's since passed, but he used to record everything. Nigel Luby was his name.
Right.
And he would record most of the stuff we were doing. And there definitely was a 20-minute version. I've actually heard it or should I say, I did hear it at the time, but I've asked, who's now passed, Ellen White, I said, you know, you were always good at retaining these things. I'm horrible at it, you know. Do you have it? And he didn't have it. And nobody seems to have it, but I know it's somewhere. And yeah, those rehearsals were spectacular. 9 months of just playing. It was great. It really knit the band together in a good way.
That's cool. It's probably on the same stack as where Sacred Tide is or something.
Maybe. To say.
Well, we want to be respectful of your time. We know you're on an interview tour with this fabulous new album coming out. We'd love to get together with you again in the future. Please hang on the line for just a moment after we disconnect with the live here. And folks, thank you so much for joining Stephen, Trevor, myself here on Yesshift, and those watching on Drum Talk TV, where we're simulcasting. Next time we get with Trevor, we'll dig into some drumming because he does play drums. Excited about that. And you can follow us at Yesshift. I'm sorry, at facebook.com/Yesshift, at youtube.com /at Yesshift, anchor.fm/Yesshift. And if you have questions, suggestions, love mail, hate mail, you can email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Trevor, thanks again, and hang on for just a sec.
Great. Nice talking to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.